Moana is a movie I thoroughly adore. Between the music, the animation, the humor, and the best main protagonist of any Disney movie ever, don't at me, it honestly might just be my favorite Disney movie ever. It's not the best, but it's my favorite. Which is a pretty impressive feat considering how generic the story is.
You take that back!
Look, sometimes a simple story is what a movie needs. In my Twist Villains video, I went over how annoying the twists and turns were in the previous 3 Disney films, and how Moana's simple story with relatively simple twists was a much more effective aspect of this movie. I'll take Moana's story over Princess and the Frog any day. What even happened in that movie? I don't even know. I remember liking it, but I might have checked out halfway through and I don't remember anything. Does anyone even remember anything from this movie besides the villain? Here's the thing with Moana though. It's a movie with a premise as basic as it gets. It's your typical hero's journey story. The hero lives at a place. They get called to adventure. They win and save the day. Also, she shows all the naysayers that she could do it the whole time.
Yeah!
But here's a question. The story structure works as a Disney movie, sure. But does it work as an exploration of Polynesian culture? Weird question, I know, and I didn't even consider this until I saw Coco. That's a movie with a somewhat similar story structure. A family who says no to a young kid's dream. The kid leaves their world behind and explores a new one. They meet a giant talking coconut crab who single-handedly restores the audience's faith in mankind and entertainment. Oh wait, that didn't happen in Coco. So yeah, kinda similar setups, but here's one distinction I noticed. Coco to me felt like a much richer story. It's an exploration of a lot of things. Family, loss, regret, legacy, and music. Yeah, despite being a company that makes a ton of musicals, Disney rarely ever explores music in its plotlines. Apparently, Pixar were the ones who had the idea to make a musical where the music is actually integral to the story.
Ironic.
So Coco has all that going for it, but I think what really sets Coco apart from Moana, and most Disney movies if I'm being honest, is its thorough engrossment in Mexican culture. Watching this movie, you feel like you're in this Mexican village. You're learning about this culture and their traditions because it's integral to the setting and the story. Moana being set on a Polynesian island with Polynesian characters is kind of an afterthought. You get to see a little bit of the village's daily life at the beginning of the movie, and you hear about the myths that their culture believes in, but ultimately this culture doesn't really play a major role in the story. It's just kinda the dressing. The story would have been largely the same if Moana was, say, a girl living in ancient Greece and some sort of quarrel between Greek gods sent her on a journey. Or hell, if the movie was set in modern day and Moana was an aardvark, and she had to find Matt Damon so he could help her save the world from the giant shark slayer evil guy, or something. All I'm saying is Moana is a story about one girl leaving her home, sailing the ocean, finding a guy who's been stranded on an island for a while, meeting the most glorious thing ever created in existence, and using an ancient artifact to restore a deity to their former glory. It's not a story structure that's explicitly tied to Polynesian culture. It could happen in a fictional version of the present, or in a fantasy realm, or in space. Moana Planet, coming 2047. Live action version coming 2052. There is one aspect of Moana's story that's cleverly tied with Polynesian culture, however. The long pause was essentially a 2,000-year gap where Polynesians took a break from voyaging, and no one knows why. This movie offers up its own fictional explanation of this real-life event, and I think that's a pretty cool connection to Polynesian history. I wish the rest of the story had more of that, but
Oh wow!
in any case, compare Moana's relatively loose take on Polynesian culture with Coco. The story in this movie directly ties into Mexican culture and beliefs. Yeah, Pixar had to take some creative liberties, but the connection to Dia de los Muertos is there. Putting your family on the ofrenda, passing down the memories of them over generations, the foods, the locations, a lot of the language, it's all there. And this isn't a story structure you can just copy-paste into ancient Greece or Aardvark land. It's unique to Mexican culture. The songs feel like traditional Spanish songs, and a lot of the lyrics are actually sung in Spanish. Some of them are just completely in Spanish. They feel like they fit into this world in a way that some of the more Broadway-esque Disney tunes often don't.
The liberties you're taking leaves my guts shaking. You are just
What can I say except you're welcome for the tides, the sun, the sky.
We excuse this in a lot of Disney movies because we love Disney songs and we love the Broadway-esque tunes, but I feel like Disney isn't bold enough to produce one of their
esteemed musicals
without having a soundtrack designed to appeal to the widest demographics possible. But hey, That's just a theory. Also, I wanted to mention that chorizo joke. Ever wonder why those guys think it's so funny that Hector choked on a chorizo, even though you don't really get why that's so funny? That's because Pixar was making an elaborate dick joke. A joke that only Spanish audiences would find super funny. Again, something about Disney makes me think that they wouldn't add an elaborate dick joke that only Spanish audiences would pick up on in one of their movies. So why is there such a big divide between Disney and Pixar's takes on culture anyway? They both do their research, they both have really good attention to detail, and they both try their hardest to pay tribute to a culture without being controversial. Oh no. So Disney had a couple missteps with Moana, but that's okay. Disney is a completely controversy-free, equal opportunity company with a long history of treating minorities with the utmost respect. That's why the first Disney animated movie to have black characters with names came out in 1997. Okay, so let's see what happened. Disney released a Maui costume that seemed to promote brown face. Yikes. Definitely a mistake, but that one's the fault of the insane Disney marketing machine, not really the filmmakers. Also, people were upset that Maui was portrayed as overweight and kind of an asshole, as opposed to the slim, noble hero depicted in Legends. You could argue that this is Disney's interpretation of Maui, and they're free to do whatever they want, but here's the thing. Disney's interpretation is the only version of Maui that a lot of people are gonna know. Kinda like Cinderella or Snow White or Aladdin, Pocahontas, Hercules, Pinocchio. Okay, bad example. This will forever be my Pinocchio. But anyway, having a significant figure from your culture finally be represented in mainstream media, but in a way that you don't agree with and you think perpetuates stereotypes, yeah, that's kind of a problem. There are many other smaller controversies that came up with this movie, and I don't have time to go over all of them. Suffice to say, despite Disney's best efforts to be faithful to the culture and do their research, there are a couple of blind spots that tend to naturally arise whenever someone tries to adapt a culture they don't have first-hand experience with. I have nothing but respect for this movie's directors, Ron Musker and John Clements. These guys are Disney legends. They're so legendary, in fact, that I mixed up their first and last names in the script. God damn it. But yeah, these guys made so many Disney classics, it's insane. I have no doubts that they wanted to portray this culture as positively as possible. But sometimes culture can kinda fall to the wayside in favor of demographic appeal. Take Hercules, for instance, another Clements and Musker production that offers up a Disney take on a culture and their gods. In this case, Greek mythology. And hey, I'm Greek.
What do you know?
Now, I love Hercules as much as the next guy, but if we're being honest, I don't exactly consider this movie a great representation of my culture. It's like looking into a funhouse mirror version of Greece. It's entertaining, but it's kinda weird and a little off-putting, and okay, I wanna stop now. Please, let me out of this goddamn funhouse. I'm scared. No one in the movie really says anything in Greek. There's no traditional Greek foods or customs. A Greek newspaper called it another case of foreigners distorting our history and culture just to suit their commercial interests. Now look, I already said that I love Hercules and Moana. They're still great movies even if they don't get everything right. And to Moana's credit, it probably gets much more right than Hercules. But if a bland-ass white boy like me is a little upset that Hercules doesn't cater to my slight desire for accurate Greek representation, I can't even imagine how someone of an actual underrepresented race might feel about some of the more questionable aspects of this film. Lindsay Ellis, who was way smarter than me, said that Moana, despite its problems and missteps, was still an improvement for Disney, and it showed that they were making progress from movies like Pocahontas.
See how I glitter?
I agree that Moana is a significant step forward from that. But the thing is, Coco felt like its own significant step forward from Moana, and they were only released a year apart. And Coco was also directed by a white dude, Lee Unkrich. But he did his research so thoroughly and created a movie so faithful to the culture it was appropriating that no one complained. The only controversy that ever came out of Coco was early on, when a certain company tried to trademark the phrase Dia de los Muertos. Guess which company it was? So going back to that question, why did Pixar get culture and representation so right, while Disney only gets it kinda sorta right? My theory? Pixar doesn't care about appearance or branding. This is the company that made a movie about a goddamn rat trying to become a chef in a 5-star kitchen in Paris. They don't give a shit about selling toys. Their focus is always on telling a good story, even if they fail spectacularly. Like I said, Coco had the potential to alienate people who weren't familiar with Mexican culture. But Pixar went ahead and made this movie anyway, introducing people to this culture by giving it such a 3-dimensional take and making it integral to the story. And yeah, to be fair, Disney is the company that ended up releasing it, with a 20-minute Frozen short attached to the beginning. My eyes! Yeah, remember how much everyone loved this? Oh boy, I can't wait to watch Frozen 2 comes out in 2019. Are you excited? It's Frozen. Hans is still a horrible twist villain. I don't know, Disney. Releasing this movie all about Mexican culture and having the literal whitest shit imaginable preceding it, not a cute look. But that's just silly. Disney would never put branding and potential merchandise before telling a culturally relevant story, right? Right? Anyway, after all that, you might be wondering if I prefer Coco over Moana. Nope! Coco is really good, not just because of its cultural accuracy, but because of its songs, characters, and insanely powerful emotion. But it has story flaws here and there, a lack of real tension for a fair portion of the movie, it rehashes a lot of elements from previous Pixar movies, and I don't think it's all that funny, which is kinda shocking for Pixar. Moana, meanwhile, has a safe story and a lot of blind spots when it comes to culture, but it excels at everything else. The characters, the humor, the drama, the action, the songs, the shiny. It's my favorite Disney movie because it does almost everything perfectly. And yet, I wanted to criticize it. Why? Because while I came out of the theater having loved nearly every second of the experience, I came out of Coco feeling like I learned something about a culture I knew next to nothing about. Also, I was bawling my eyes out, so there's that. Any way you look at it, Disney has a long way to go in terms of representation, but maybe they could take a lesson from Pixar's book. If they want to tell an original story, they should just put faith in it and don't try to appeal to as wide of a consumer base as possible. A good story is like music. There's all sorts of different types of music out there, and not every song appeals to every person. Disney doesn't seem to believe that an audience will listen to a song that sounds a little different than what they're used to. But the truth is, that doesn't matter. They will listen to music.
For this music is my language and the world es mi familia. This music is my language.
We got a sinker!